Well, hello everyone, and welcome back. In a number of my prior videos, I've talked about the various ratios that are used to analyze any potential investment in real estate. One of those is the internal rate of return. And the internal rate of return is one of those ratios that is a go-to ratio for me. It's one that I use in every analysis that I do for any potential real estate investment. There is one drawback, though, to it, and that is it doesn't give a complete picture of the returns to be expected on the property. For instance, when looking at the internal rate of return, and you might see a return of 13, 14, 15%, that doesn't give a clear picture of, for instance, the cash flow during the term of the investment, and it doesn't give a complete picture as far as the tax benefit. So the way we get around that in the industry is we try to partition the internal rate of return between its various components. We will break it down between the cash flow portion of the internal rate of return, the tax benefit portion, and then the appreciation portion. That way we can get a clear picture of where is that return coming from. So when we have a return of 13, 14, 15%, well, how much of that return is actually due to appreciation? Is the investment completely back-end loaded? What is an accurate picture? I'm going to go ahead and show you how to partition the internal rate of return between its components. These calculations can be somewhat difficult to calculate and difficult to understand, but let's just go ahead and I'll show you how to do it. Partitioning the internal rate of return is a difficult concept to get your arms around. It's difficult to calculate, and it's difficult to understand. But I'm going to take my time, work my way through each step, and hopefully you'll come away with something that you can use on your own investments. Let's work through this sample investment, and I'll show you exactly how to partition the internal rate of return between its various components. Here is where all the calculations are done for partitioning the internal rate of return between its components. Again, our model, which we put together, actually broke down the various components up here. So, for instance, here was the cash flow line, then there was the tax obligation line here, and then finally here was the appreciation line here. So in this matrix, all I did was first, I carried down those numbers. Here is the cash flow line. And if you look again, back up here, that's this line. All I did, carried it down. Next, I wanted to carry down the tax obligation or benefit line. That was this line. Carried that down here. And then finally the appreciation. The appreciation was calculated here in this line. And that was just brought down here. Then, when we calculated the internal rate of return, all we did was equate this cash flow line to the original investment, which was $441,000. And that was done here, and we came out with an internal rate of return of 12.53. I'll highlight this. Here was the formula, and it was just calculating based upon this line. Now, we've broken down each of the components of this line. Put them here. The next step is to discount back each one of these components at the internal rate of return of 12.53. And that was done here. So we used the present value formula and discounted those back at 12.53. Here was the answer. Next step, did the exact same thing, but with the tax benefit obligation line. And that was here. Same formula. And then finally, I did the same thing with the appreciation, and that was done here. Now, if I have done all those steps correctly, so if I broke down the components here, now if I add these three together, it should add up to 441,000, same as here. That is the first step in doing the partitioning. Then, if I do this calculation, if I take the cash flow before taxes, this line, the discounted cash flow before taxes, divide that by 441,000, that makes up 14.41% of the internal rate of return. If I did the same calculation here with the taxes, take 44,484 and some change, which is a negative number, divide that by 441, that is a negative 10.09%. Then, if I take the 421,941 and some change and divide that by 441,000, that is 95.68% of the internal rate of return. Okay, so what does that mean now? Now, I have to do just one more calculation. I'm going to then just calculate what is 14% of 12.53%, and that's 1.81. Or if I take what's a negative 10.09% of 12.53, that's a negative 1.26. And then finally, what is 95.68% of the internal rate of return? That's 11.99. So as a check, again, if I add these three numbers together, that should equal 12.53%, and it does. Okay, so what have I done there? I have partitioned the internal rate of return between its components. So what does this all mean? Well, of the 12.53%, 1.81% of it comes from the cash flow, a negative 1.26 comes from the tax benefit, and 11.99% of this 12.53 of that total comes from the appreciation. What does it all mean? It simply means then that as an investment, you're the investor. Is there going to be much of a cash flow during the entire term of the investment? No, there won't be much. And in fact, you'll have a tax obligation. Where is all the payoff coming? It comes at the end when you sell the asset. So when you see an asset like this, that is where all the cash flow is actually going to be paid at the end, it is back-end loaded. And that's the most risk. That is called partitioning the internal rate of return. Okay, let's just move on, and I have some final comments. Well, are you still with me? I know those calculations were fairly difficult, but I do think it could be a good tool for you to use to analyze any potential investment. It takes a little work to use it, but it has certainly proved itself to be worthwhile to me. And I will add like this, especially when I'm doing a presentation to potential investors, I break down the internal rate of return for them so they can see exactly what's happening. It makes for a fairly quick review of the actual performance of the asset. Okay, enough of that. Next, we're going to actually take this one step further. I know that's a pretty scary thought, but what we're going to do is add to the analysis a sensitivity analysis. And what that analysis does is it helps to show what happens if any of the inputs or variables that we have put in the model prove to be incorrect. So what we do is we start changing the variables and look at how the return on the asset is impacted. All right, enough of that here right now. That will probably be the most difficult calculations that we will do, but I'll run through it with you quickly. Now, if you're ever interested in seeing an actual copy of the spreadsheet that I use here, that's fine. Just send me an email and I'll send it over to you. I don't post it online, but if you want it, that's fine. Okay, I think that's just about it. If you like this, please like, subscribe, and share. Thank you very much.